The internet has an aesthetic for everything. There's an aesthetic for waking up, an aesthetic for working, an aesthetic for resting, even an aesthetic for existing. And if you spend enough time on social media, you might start to feel like life is supposed to look like this. A perfect morning routine, an immaculate home, a coffee with perfectly drawn foam, a perfect smoothie, a 15-step skincare routine, or more. Everything clean, everything organized, everything productive. Has this ever happened to you? You see this kind of content, and for a moment, you feel like your life should look like that too. Welcome. This is Conscious Conversations. And today I want to talk about something we've all probably seen on the internet. That perfect, clean, aesthetic version of life. Because the question isn't whether these routines exist. The real question is something else. Does anyone actually live like this all the time? Or are we looking at a highly produced version of life that slowly starts to feel like the standard? If you've ever tried to follow one of these routines, you probably realized something pretty quickly. It's not as easy as it looks. Because watching a perfect morning routine online is one thing, but recreating it in real life is something completely different. Maybe you tried waking up early, making the perfect coffee, organizing everything so your space looks beautiful. And at some point you realize something. For it to look like that, it has to be produced. In fact, you often notice this the moment you try to do it yourself. Maybe you tried taking a nice photo for your own social media. A coffee, a meal, a corner of your house. Something that looked perfect in your head. But when you actually try to take the picture, you notice something very quickly. The angle matters. The lighting matters. The background matters. Suddenly, you move the cup 5 times. You change where the plate is. You search for the best light in the room. And that moment that seemed natural starts to look a lot more like a small production. Something interesting happens when people create content. Usually, there is one part of the space that's very carefully prepared. A nice corner, good lighting, a clean background. But everything outside the camera frame might look completely different. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's simply how creating content works. What we see online is often just that small frame where everything looks perfect, not the whole room, not the entire day, just that moment. And this is where it becomes interesting. Because most of this content is presented as if it were completely natural, as if someone simply woke up and their life just looked like that. But many times what we're actually seeing is a very specific, carefully prepared moment inside a space designed to look good on camera. Because in real life, life doesn't look like this all the time. In real life, you come home tired. Sometimes you leave your bag on the chair. Sometimes things are on the table. Sometimes your room doesn't look perfect. And that doesn't mean you're living badly. It means you're living a real life. The problem is that when we spend too much time watching these carefully curated versions of life online, we start comparing ourselves to a standard that doesn't actually exist. It's like comparing your life to a movie set. Of course it looks perfect. It was built to look perfect. And that's when frustration begins to appear. Because suddenly, it feels like we're not doing enough. Our routine isn't productive enough. Our space isn't clean enough. Our life isn't aesthetic enough. But maybe the problem isn't your life. Maybe the problem is the standard you're comparing it to. Because real self-care often looks much simpler than what we see online. Sometimes self-care is just waking up, Making yourself something to eat, taking a shower, tidying up your space a little, and continuing with your day. It doesn't have soft background music, it doesn't have perfect lighting, and it probably wouldn't look great in a TikTok video. But that doesn't make it any less valuable. And still, we keep watching this kind of content. Perfect morning routines, immaculate homes, endless skincare routines. So the question becomes inevitable. Why do we enjoy watching it so much? Part of the answer is actually very simple. Because it's aspirational. It looks beautiful. It looks calm. It looks organized. And in a world where real life often feels chaotic, watching something clean, organized, and perfectly controlled can actually feel relaxing. It's like looking at an edited version of life, a version where everything is under control, and visually, that's very appealing. The problem starts when we forget that this is exactly what it is, an edited version. And maybe the real conversation isn't about whether these routines are good or bad, because many of the things we see, exercise, taking care of your space, creating moments of calm, can be very positive things. The problem appears when we forget something important. What we see online is not the full picture of life. It's a carefully selected version of it. And if there is one thing I hope stays with you after watching this video, it's this. Your life was never meant to look perfect on camera. It was meant to be lived. Maybe you like minimalism. Maybe you like keeping everything organized. Maybe you enjoy smoothies or waking up early, and that's completely fine. But a good life is not a perfectly aesthetic life. It's a real life, a coherent life, a life that works for you. Now, I'm really curious about something. Has this ever happened to you? You see this kind of content, and for a moment, you feel like your life should look like that too. Because it has definitely happened to me. If it has happened to you as well, tell me in the comments. I'd really like to know how you experience this. If you enjoy these kinds of reflections, where we take everyday things we see online and think about them a little more deeply, about this topic or any other, this is your space. This is Conscious Conversations. And if you liked this video, you can support the channel with a like or by subscribing. It really helps these ideas reach more people. See you in the next one.